Hi, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week. So, this week, again, is another very difficult topic. Um, but I think for everyone, especially in social work, it's an important discussion and an important topic. So, chapter 4 pertained to, just an introduction to child abuse, the different definitions, the different concepts. Chapter 5 pertains more to the investigation of child abuse cases. The textbook is primarily going to be a little bit more focused from the criminal justice standpoint. So this textbook has a little bit more of a criminal justice focus as a whole. So keep that in mind, kind of as you're reading this. It's not necessarily what CPS would do. This might be more related to how a criminal justice system might intervene. So we're going to talk a little bit about the role of the different agencies, law enforcement, CPS, regarding the assessment and how they respond to child abuse. We're going to talk about injury location and patterns and how to look for those, particularly with regard to physical abuse. We're going to talk a little bit about child death abuse. And we're going to talk quite a bit about sexual abuse indicators. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with talking about the Children's Advocacy Center model. So that's going to be an important model for you all to understand. So when we think about child abuse cases, the first thing that happens oftentimes is there's some kind of first responder. So that might be the EMTs or the paramedics that show up. And so they're often going to be giving like emergent medical care if needed. And then obviously transporting any children, any patients to a hospital if necessary. The other first responders might be police officers if they determine that probable cause exists, that a crime has been committed. And so then they will be working to identify an offender in the incident, so a perpetrator who perpetrated the abuse. And then finally, you're going to have the social service or CPS caseworkers who's going to make the determinations about safety and safety of the child in the home. And so this is where police officers and CPS often coincide and have to work together a lot of times, because when police officers go on scene and there is a child abuse case, then their immediate call is going to be to CPS. So these are some of the first people who are on scene with like an emergent child abuse case. So when you're looking at physical abuse, so it's going to be really important to, first of all, collect evidence, because they're going to need evidence for any criminal case that they have against the perpetrator, but then also you're going to need evidence for court regarding the child's living arrangements and where they're going to be staying, and determining who the child is going to be staying with. And so you need all different kinds of evidence. And a big part of that is, again, CPS working with police officers. Any other reports or documentation, maybe reports have been called in the past and have been dismissed, or the police have gone on scene to this house in the past, and nothing came of it, kind of thing. So there's going to be a lot of history that's going to be collected as well before even interviewing the victim. So then when you're looking at abuse cases, obviously with physical abuse especially, you're going to be looking for bruising and markings. So any location of injury that the child is incapable of self-inflicting is a cause for harm. So again, we're not talking about a child like hitting themselves, kind of self-inflicting. We're talking about a 3-year-old who is running and jumping and bumps their knee on the coffee table, or a 1-year-old who just started walking and falls down a lot, kind of thing. So you're particularly looking at bruising and injury to areas that are not those common kinds of places. Um, we're again non-accidental injury. So if a child is punched or kicked, thrown or shaken, there could be pretty significant legal responsibilities. So, and again, police and CPS are trained on age dating of bruising. And so really looking at the color of the bruising to determine how far back the bruising goes or how long ago the incident happened. So obviously bright red, something that's still red and hasn't bruised over yet is something that just happened. If it's transitioning to bluish or purple, that usually ranges from 2 to 5 days old. Green is usually 5 to 7 days old. Then a yellow is 7 to 10. And then sometimes there's no evidence of bruising as well. So all of these things, again, are things that we're looking for and looking at on a child. Then you're looking for a pattern of injury. So you're looking for common household items, maybe a shoe, maybe a hairbrush. The most commonly used object, though, is the hand. And so that's considered still the most frequently used weapon is a hand. So you might be looking for patterns of bruising. So like a hairbrush, a cord, so thin lines kind of thing. You might be looking for biting, scratches. You might be looking for, other types of injuries like that. Burns. So that's the other thing that I was going to mention was burns. So burn injuries account for 60 to 20% of all abuse cases. And it's reported and estimated that 10% of all children suffering from physical abuse experience some type of burn. Children under the age of 4 are at the greatest risk, with boys being more likely to receive a burn than a girl. So more children under the age of 4 die from abuse and neglect than automobile accidents, falls, fires, drowning, suffocating, and choking on food. So again, we're talking about a very high number of children who experience death due to abuse. So there's been specialized units that have been set up for investigating child abuse. Usually within police departments, there's a specific detectives who have been assigned to child abuse cases. So then also when we talk about child sexual abuse as well, again, it varies state to state depending on what kind of legal standards they have for determining sexual abuse and substantiating whether or not sexual abuse has happened. Some states use a preponderance of evidence, whereas others use credible evidence or reasonable evidence or probable cause. It's something that can happen within the family or even outside of the family as well. So with sexual assault with our children, we're talking about molestation, we're talking about rape, voyeurism, exhibitionism, pornography, forced prostitution, and incest as well. So incest is any sexual activity with a person who is closely related. So incest refers to any sexual activity between persons who are so closely related that their marriage is illegal. So aunts and uncles, cousins, nieces and nephews, parents and children, things like that. Childhood sibling incest is also considered to be widespread, but it tends to be low, not reported as often. So some things that you might see in children who have been sexually abused. You might see a lot of sexually acting out. You might see masturbation. You might see interest in or avoidance of all things sexual nature. Some other things not listed here as well. Is you might see a lot of regression. So, particularly for younger kids, like 5 and younger, you might see more bedwetting, sucking on their thumb, um, things that they've already been potty trained. This is out of the norm, kind of thing. It's unusual for this to happen. So, a lot of regression back towards younger um, acts. So sexual and non-sexual trauma to the genitalia area can result in abrasions, bruising, and lacerations. Again, they may be at risk for sexually transmitted diseases, or if they're old enough, potentially pregnancy as well. And then finally, one of the things, especially in Texas, that is a big component to all sexual abuse cases is the Children's Advocacy Center model. And so this consists of a multidisciplinary team of investigators. So usually they have trained forensic interviewers who interview the child, and that interview is videotaped. And so it is something that the multidisciplinary team of the police, the nurses, the social workers, investigators, CPS, everything can work together on this case. So a big part of this model is the establishment of children's advocacy centers, which offer victim advocacy support programs and access to mental health treatment in addition to investigative services. So it's kind of a wraparound program. So there's a multidisciplinary team on the investigation side, and then after investigation's kind of been complete, we work on victim advocacy and support programs as well. So this is just a little bit about chapter 5. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much.